Carol White. Is she here in the studio? Mrs. Carol White, would you be kind enough to come up here, Miss White, or Mrs. White? And let's see, now we have Mrs. Robert Mart. Is that right? Miss Smart, I guess. Mrs. Robert Smart. Mrs. Smart, would you please step up here? Here she comes. Mrs. Harold Irwin. Mrs. Harold Irwin. Well, say, fine. And last but not least, Mrs. Robert S. Crowley. All right, fine. Here's Mrs. Crowley over here. Well, say, it's awfully nice to have you ladies here this afternoon. Now, where are you from, by the way?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha, Nebraska. Well, say, you had to get up early this morning to get here this afternoon, didn't you? And where are you from?
Oak Lawn, Illinois.
Oak Lawn, Illinois. Good for you. And you?
Modesto, California.
Well, how long have you been in Chicago?
Less than a month.
Less than a month. Well, what brings you here to Chicago?
My husband's going to school here.
Oh, he's going to school? What school?
It's Dr. White, piano tuning.
Oh, piano tuning. Well, fine. And how about you? Now, where are you from?
Kansas City, Kansas.
Kansas City, Kansas. Well, I'll tell you, ladies, the reason I asked you to come up here, and you were very, very kind to come up here, we would like to hear you ladies describe how handsome your husbands are. And so I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll start off with Mrs. White first. Now, Mrs. White, we'd like for you to, we'd like to hear you describe how handsome you think your husband is. Now, would you like to do that so we can all hear?
Well, I'd be glad to.
All right, fine.
He's about 6'1", and he's dark complexion.
Oh.
His dark eyes.
Dark eyes.
And
you got hair?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Very much.
Well, I think men can be handsome without hair. Now, what are you laughing at? All right. And what else? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, he has a very nice disposition.
A nice disposition? Yes. And you think he's really and truly handsome, eh?
Well, I think so.
All right, good for you. Now then, let's see. Next we have Mrs. Smart. All right, Mrs. Smart, we want to hear you describe how handsome your husband is.
Well, I think he's very handsome. I like him a great deal, and he's 6'2", fair, gray eyes, and he has hair.
Oh, he has hair.
Yes.
Oh, fine.
Hope he has for some time to come.
Well, I hope you get your hope, yes. All right, and was there anything else you'd like to add?
He's very easy to get along with.
Very easy to get along with. All right, fine. Thank you a lot. Now, then next we have Mrs. Irwin. All right, Mrs. Irwin. Now, you just tell the audience, describe the audience, how handsome your piano tuning husband is.
Well, he's about 6 feet, has brown hair and blue-green eyes. He has a lot of hair.
He has a lot of hair.
I think you'll have it a long time, too.
All these fellows are tall, 6 and 6'2". All right, fine. And now then, let's see, last but not least, we have Mrs. Crowley from Kansas City, Kansas. All right, Mrs. Crowley, now, would you describe your husband, how handsome he is?
He's a very distinguished-looking gentleman, although he's not tall like these other men.
You mean he's short like me?
Short like I am.
Oh, all right. So?
He weighs a few pounds less than I do.
He does? How much do you weigh, by the way?
I weigh 128 pounds.
128, And is there anything else you'd like to add?
He has a very even disposition. He holds me down beautifully.
Well, fine. All right. Well, I'll tell you, we're going to leave it up to the audience as to who gave the best description of how handsome her husband is. So, first, those in favor of Mrs. White will signify by applauding. And this lady over here, next. And the third lady. And Mrs. Crowley. Well, it sounds like you have the handsomest husband of all four of the gentlemen. So, I'll tell you what we're going to do now. We incidentally had your husbands in the control room listening to you. So we're going to ask them to come out, and we'll take a gander at Mr. Crowley and just see if Mrs. Crowley knows what she's talking about. Would you gentlemen step out here, please? They heard every word that you ladies said. Oh, here comes short and handsome himself. Just step right over here. Now, just step right over here, gentlemen. That's fine. Now, let's see. What is your name? Oh, Mr. Smart. Awfully glad to meet you. And what is your name? Mr. Irwin. And your...
Cy White.
Oh, Mr. Cy
White.
Cy White. Oh, I see. And this is handsome as handsome does. Well, good for you. I think we ought to give a great big hand to Mr. Incidentally, how did you fellas like the descriptions you heard of yourselves while you were in the fishbowl there?
We were flattered.
You were flattered?
That's right.
Well, I have the same trouble myself. Yeah, I guess we go to the same barber, don't we? All right. Well, I want to thank you folks. It's awfully nice talking with you, and you may go back to your seats now. And I hope you'll all come up and be with us again sometime. Goodbye. All right. Well, now let's see. Incidentally, I have another one here. Another lady I'd like to call up here, Elizabeth Thompson from Denver, Colorado. Miss Elizabeth Thompson, would you like to step up here, please? Let's see. It says here you play the electric steel guitar. Is that right? Or is that Miss or Mrs.?
Miss.
Oh, it's Miss. Oh, I'm glad you told me. But, yeah, I almost called you Mrs. there, you know. That would have been a miss, wouldn't it? Yeah. Well, anyway, I just want to ask you one thing. First, would you like to have your picture taken?
No.
Wouldn't you really? I mean, with me, with my chief quizzer outfit on?
I don't think this picture.
Well, I'd like to have a picture of you. Would you mind doing that for me?
No,
All right. Well, now let.
Take off my glasses.
Oh, well, maybe you'd better because I always keep my hat on account of the reflection. See, I'd like for you to meet Larry Wolf, Miss. Of course, don't pay any attention. Don't let that last name bother you. Yeah, it's spelled with two O's. All right, Larry, Miss Thompson, see, and we're going to have our picture taken here. And we're using one of those Polaroid cameras that develops the picture in about 60 seconds, so we'll be able to see it, see? All right, fine. All right, now, how do you want... Should I have my arm around Miss Thompson or what? Well, does it sound very good to you?
It's just better than me.
Well, I'll tell you, of course, my wife, I guess it's all right. My wife isn't in here, and you don't have a husband. So, all right, Larry, now, everybody, we just look at the birdie over there. Larry's the birdie. Yeah. All right. Oh, boy, I bet that's going to be a dandy. You taking, oh, I see. It's sort of a time exposure. Oh, fine. Now then, I'd like to ask you a question, Miss Thompson. If you could call somebody on the telephone here, long distance, who would you call? Who would you like to call? I mean, if that were possible. You'd like to call your father. And where's your father, by the way? Oh, he's in Denver. Do you live with your dad? And is your mother living? Oh, that's too bad. I'm terribly sorry to hear that. Well, we don't have telephone communication.
I'm a telephone girl anyway.
You are?
That's my job.
You mean you're a yes and no girl?
I'm in the accounting department.
Oh, in the what?
Accounting.
Oh, in the accounting department. Well, all right.
Right up my line.
Now, I want to ask you something else. You know, the world is in quite a situation today, what with Russia trying to force communism on the rest of the world, and, of course, America is sticking up for the ideals of democracy. I want to ask you this question. What, in your own words, tell us what democracy means to you. Would you tell us that?
Our way of life.
Well, what do you mean, our way of life? Can you give some of the...
Voting for our own president.
Voting for our own president?
All the officers down the line, our governors.
I see. You're not nervous, by the way, are you?
I didn't have my guitar.
Oh, you would? Well, why didn't you bring your guitar with you?
It's down at the studio.
Oh, it's down at the studio. And so that's what democracy means to you.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Well, say, it's awfully nice meeting you, and I hope our picture turns out all right, because if it does, I'm going to make you a little present of it. And you can take it back. As a matter of fact, we'll all take a look at it right up here in the studio. Thank you so much, and say hello to your dad for me, won't you? Okay, bye-bye. Let's give a nice hand in this time. Now then, I'm going to ask Howard to give us a little mood music on this next little offering. Everybody likes to go down memory lane from time to time, go back through the years, and think about the memories that we hold near and dear to our hearts. And for this next visitor, I'd like to call up a very lovely lady who is the oldest lady here in the studio. And her name is Marco Daisy Esmond. Is the lady here in the studio? Oh, here she is. Would you come around over this way and step right up here, please, so we can all meet you? And Larry, I think you ought to get that camera all set for another picture, because I'm going to enjoy very much having my picture taken with this lady. Here we are. Let's see. Maybe I hope I didn't get your name wrong. Is that Marco?
M-A-R-C-O.
Marco Daisy Esmond. Yes. And would you step over here? Is that Mrs. Esmond?
Yes.
Oh, Miss.
Yes.
My goodness, we have a lot of maiden ladies this afternoon, don't we? I would like for you to turn around here so you can see all the folks. And do you mind telling us how old you are?
I'll turn 90 on the 30th of October.
Now, how do you like that? 90 on the 30th. Well, you know, Miss Esmond, you don't look a day over 48. How do you feel anyway? Are you in good spirits? I mean, you wake up in the morning feeling fine and dandy?
And I sleep good at night, and I listen to the radio all day long. I know all of you by radio.
Do you really?
I go out to the breakfast, and I go back and turn my radio on, and I sit there until dinner time. And I go back, leave it all set for the afternoon program, and I listen to everything. As I said, I was so glad to hear Joel.
Well, good for you. Well, now tell me something. If you sit and listen to, do you have a television set?
No.
Oh, you don't? And where are you from, by the way?
I belong in New Orleans. It's my home.
Oh, that's your home.
It's my home. But I've lived in Chicago for the last 50 or 60 years.
Oh.
Since the Haymarket.
How do you like that?
I have grown up with Chicago, and I'm very proud of Chicago.
Well, good for you. Now, that's loyalty, I want to tell you. Yes, sirree. I'd like to ask you something. As I said before, we like to go back through the years, and I'm sure you're not an exception insofar as that's concerned. I know I like to think back when I was a kid sometimes. How about yourself? Can you remember, how far back can you remember?
From the time I was about 3 years old.
3 years old? Well, what can you tell us that you were doing when you were 3 years old that you remember?
Well, one thing was, one of our neighbors had one of those hitching posts out in front of New Orleans.
Oh.
And it was an iron post with a horse's head on top of it.
Oh, yeah.
And a big ring to run the reins and all through. And Mother had a reception at home that day, and I was in the waist. So the maids all were supposed to look after me. I remember I hung a very beautiful little pink dress. I was a little blonde, with blonde curly hair. And I got away from them and got down by the park where the hitching post was.
Yeah.
And I had the greatest sport hugging that and running and swinging around in the rings where they put the bridles through.
Well.
And I had my dress, all the black tar paint, all down the front. I remember the licking that I got.
I wondered why you remembered. I was going to say, yeah, I knew that licking would stay with you for years and years.
And I remember that and being put to bed.
Oh, that's fine.
Down to the day. And every time I go to New Orleans now, and I go down that way, I look to see if that hitching post is there. I've never forgotten that.
Say, I'd like to ask you a very personal question, if you don't mind.
No.
You don't mind?
No.
All right. Tell me, how come you never got married?
The good Lord willed it otherwise.
Oh?
I was ready for the ceremony, and they all met with sudden death.
Oh, that's a shame.
So I said he willed it up.
3 different times?
3 different times.
Well, that's too bad.
Clothes were all packed and everything.
Oh, well, what do you know about that? Well, that's fate.
That's
So, you know something? You said your birthday is when? October
the 30th.
the 30th? Do you mind if I get everybody here in the studio to sort of anticipate your birthday a little bit by singing happy birthday to you? Let's do that. 90 years old. Howard, how about a little birthday song here to Marco Daisy? We'll get the happy birthday, dear Marco Daisy. We'll get it all in that way. See? All right, here we go now. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Marco Daisy. Happy birthday to you. Well, Miss Esmond, it certainly has been a pleasure. I'm awfully glad you were here this afternoon. It's nice talking to you, and I hope you'll come up and see us again, and I hope you have a wonderful birthday.
I'm on the radio from 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you are, every time I'm on the radio, I'm going to think about you.
Well, I'm on the radio.
Now, wait a minute. I'm on the radio, see? Yeah, all right.
I listen to all the programs, and when I leave the room to go to meals, I have the radio set for the next program.
Well, bless your heart. Well, lots of luck to you, and can you find your way back to the seat over there? Thanks for bringing her up. I think we ought to give her. All right, well, so much for memory lane. Now then, I'll tell you, I'd like to have 3 ladies come up. Let's see, Mrs. J. Harry Moser. Is Mrs. Moser in the audience? Mrs. J. Harry Moser. Say, this is more fun than a barrel of monkeys, isn't it? Are you Mrs. Moser? Well, good for you. Come on up here, won't you? I'm awfully glad to meet you. Well, say, everybody's so cooperative. Would you mind standing on that little spot right there?
Just a certain spot.
Just a certain spot. All right, Mrs. Moser. Now, just a second. I want to get Anna Ferrier. Is Anna Ferrier here? Let's see. No, she isn't here. Let's see who else we have. Mrs. E. Innes? Mrs. Innes? Oh, Mrs. Innes. All right, fine. Well, awfully happy to have you with us this afternoon, Mrs. Innes. Now, there's another spot right there for you. You can stand on. And let's see, Mrs. Dunn. Mrs. F.S. Dunn. Is Mrs. Dunn or Drum? Oh, Mrs. Drum. Would you step up here, Mrs. Drum? Well, now let's see. First of all, I want to, let's see, your name is Mrs. Moser. Now, Mrs. Moser, can you tell us where you're from?
Yes, from Altoona, Pennsylvania.
From Altoona, Pennsylvania. What brings you here?
Well, I'm here with my son-in-law and my daughter.
Oh.
He is here attending the convention.
Oh, I see. Well, good for you. Are you enjoying yourself?
Very much. I just got in this afternoon.
Well, I will say you've got a head start, haven't you?
Yes, I want to hurry to get here.
Well, my goodness. And Mrs. Drum, now where are you from?
New Orleans.
From New Orleans. Well, good
yes.
for you. And were you born in New Orleans?
Yes. That's my cousin, Miss Esmond.
Oh, Miss Esmond is your
She's
cousin.
with us. That's New Orleans crowd.
Well,
right
she's
there.
a wonderful lady, isn't she?
she wonderful?
Oh, I should say so. I really and truly enjoyed meeting her. Excuse me just a minute. Now, let's see. Your name is?
Innes.
Mrs. Innes. And where are you from, Mrs. Innes?
New Westminster, British Columbia, Canada.
Well, hooray for you. Well, that's wonderful, Mrs. Ennis. You know, I married a Canadian girl. Incidentally, I just came back from a different part of Canada, of course, up in Ontario.
Oh, yes, I was born in Ontario.
Whereabouts?
Down in the Halliburton country.
Well, what do you know about that? Well, my wife comes from Kingston, Ontario.
Oh,
That's where Queen's University is,
Yes.
you know, and the Royal Military Academy. Oh, yes, wonderful country up there. Now, I want to ask you ladies a question. Which is worse, a woman who drives from the back seat or a man who cooks from the dining room table? What do you think is worse, Mrs.?
Well, I would think the man that cooks from the dining room table.
Do you have a man that cooks from the dining room table?
I haven't got a man.
Oh.
He's gone long
go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, are you, by any chance, a backseat driver?
No.
You're not, huh?
No.
All right. Well, how about you, Miss Moser?
I think backseat driver.
Well, why do you say that?
Well, I don't think it works sometimes.
You don't?
No, I don't believe it's a good idea.
Well, do you? Does your husband cook from the dining room table?
No, my husband has to.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. All right, Mrs. Drum, how about you now? How do you feel about this situation?
I think he would be a very good backseat driver if
Who?
he had an opportunity.
Who's
My
that?
husband.
Oh, your husband. Well, we're talking about the ladies being doing the backseat driving. See?
Well, we don't drive. That's the reason I said that he would be a good backseat driver if he had a chance.
Oh. Well, tell me, you cook, don't you?
Oh, yes.
Well, does he try and cook from the dining room table?
Well, I think sometimes it gives me a little, advice.
Is that so? What does he like most of your cooking or baking? What?
Well, he says he likes everything, but after 50 years, he ought to.
Oh. Yes, he really should after 50 years. Well, ladies, it's awfully nice talking with you, and lots of luck to you, and I hope you enjoy your visit here, and say hello to the King and the Queen the next time you see him for me, won't you?
I see them, I sure will.
All right, fine. Thank you a lot. All right, now we're going to have a little skit here, and we'd like a lady to work in this skit. Let's see, who do we have here? How about Mrs. Oswald? Mrs. Oswald. Is she in the studio? Mrs. Oswald? Mrs. P.J. Oswald. And, no? Well, I know some of the folks had to leave because they had other plans. How about Mrs. Lena Snyder? Is she in the studio? Mrs. Lena Snyder? Well, how about, let's see, Anna Walrath? Anna Walrath? Well, say, let's see now. Is that Mrs. Walrath?
No, it's Miss too.
Is there a convention of maiden ladies in Chicago? Huh? Why, I'll tell you, we're going to have to sort of pretend an awful lot on this little skit here. I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to be your husband, see? Oh, dear. And say, by the way, where are you from?
From Chicago.
Oh, you're from right here in Chicago? Where do you live in Chicago?
1666 Farwell.
Fine. Is this the first broadcast you've ever attended?
In this studio.
Oh, is that so? You've been up to see some of the other shows?
Yes.
What shows, for instance?
Tom Moore.
Oh, Tom Moore. Say, he's a dandy chap, isn't he? Yes, sir. Tom's all right. He has a very wonderful program. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. You're supposed to be ironing my shirt, see? And you only have 10 minutes to do it. Now, we've got the props, we've got the door, and this, we're just going to see the different things that happen to a housewife when she's trying to get things done, you know, the doorbell ringing, telephone, all that stuff like that. And she has to get to her housework done. So you're supposed, that is not my shirt over there, I want you to know. It's one that's been lying in the prop room, I think. But anyway, we're going to pretend. You're to iron my shirt. You only have 10 minutes to do it when I'm coming home. And I'm coming home for lunch, see? Now, let's see. We have the door, and we have the iron, and I think the iron is real hot, so you'll have to test it out. You know how the girls do that. Yeah. How do you test an iron out? Just like that, huh? Yeah, all right. And then we have the shirt, and that can be the ironing board. Now, do you prefer sitting down while you're ironing?
No, I'd rather stand.
You'd rather stand. All right. And now then we've got some different ones that are going to interrupt you from time to time, so you must carry on a conversation with them and try and get that ironing done before I come home to lunch, see, because I'm a tough guy yeah. All right, well, you get over there. When I count three, things are going to happen.
Okay.
All right, fine. You better get over there and test the iron out now. All right. Well, let's see. We better take these things away here. Yeah, you. All right, now, Miss Walrath is ironing, and she only has 10 minutes to do it. When I come walking in through the door, Miss Walrath, Now, wait a minute. Take it easy. That's my shirt, you know. All right. I think there's somebody at the door. You'll have to open the door and see who it is. Yeah, just ask, invite him in. He's the Iceman, see. All right. Uh-oh, somebody else.
How do you do, madam? I'm representing the Board of Broadcasters. I have a dandy new block here that I'd like to demonstrate for you. Of course, I'm not really a front sales, and I'm working my way through college. But I would like to look here. We have a little water. Something told me that is for all your
All right, now, you're not finished. You have to keep... No, you're not finished yet. You have to keep ironing, yeah. Because we have some... Watch your hands, honey. Well, all right, now the husband's coming home now. Oh, darn it, I forgot my key. Well, I might as well. Well, say, what's going on here? Where's lunch?
Well, I haven't finished your shirt.
Well, why? Well, what have you been doing all morning?
There were so many people. The Iceman was here.
Oh, the Iceman was here, huh?
The Bullet Brush Man was here, and everybody was paying me. But here's your shirt.
Well, thanks a lot. I can't. Will you fry it on the other side? Well, Miss Walrat, anything that we were saying here, I hope you won't take any offense. It was all a lot of fun, and let's give her a nice big. Thanks so much. Now we're going to have a little quiz. I'd like to call on some more ladies here. Let's see, and I'd like to have them take their places at the Quiz Kids desk. How about Mrs. Engel? Is Mrs. Engel here in the studio? Mrs. Engel? Mrs. Engel? Would you like to sit up there and be Pat, Mrs. Engel? All right, Mrs. Engel. Now, and how about Mrs. Lichtenfeld? Is Mrs. Lichtenfeld, Mrs. G. Lichtenfeld, is she in the studio? Oh, fine. Would you come up and be one of our quiz kids, or whiz kids, I might say? Mrs. Lichtenfeld, and you can be Alan, age 13. All right, let's see now. How about Mrs. A. Knoll? K-N-O-L-L. Mrs. A. Knoll. Are you Mrs. Knoll? All right, Mrs. Knoll, will you step up here, and you can sit at Brenda's desk, and this lady coming up here now can sit at Alan's desk. All right, Mrs. Ruth S. Hill. Is Mrs. Hill in the studio? All right, Mrs. Hill, you could be Lonnie. Well, I wonder if somebody moved the door over there so we can see these beautiful ladies. That's it. All right. Larry, yes, if you move the door. And Miss Jean Randall, is she in the audience? Miss Randall? Miss Jean Randall. All right, Miss Jean Randall, you can be Joel, age 14. Now, I'll tell you what we're going to do here. We're going to play a little game called Coffee Pot. And we get the door out of the way here so we can see Howard, because Howard may want to serenade the ladies with his organ playing. All right, now the idea of this little game is, as I said before, we call it coffee pot, and coffee pot means a certain action in the home every day. Do we have somebody with a card that? Okay. So you ladies are to ask me. Now this happens somewhere in the home. We call it coffee pot, and like if you say, "Well, can you coffee pot in the attic?" Why, I will answer, and until you ladies finally pin me down to a specific place in the home where one coffee pot, so to speak. This cute? Oh, you really have to percolate on this, yeah. All right, now, who would like to start this off by asking me, do you coffee pot in the... Let's start with this lady down here. Let's see. Who was last? Miss Randall? And incidentally, Miss Randall, you're from Canada, I see.
Yes.
Windsor, Ontario.
That's right.
That's a fine city. Very, very good. And how long are you staying here?
About 3 or 4 days.
What brings you here, if I may ask?
Oh, we just come down to see the city.
See the city?
Mm-hmm.
Well, good for you. I hope you enjoy your stay here. All right, now, would you like to start us off on this coffee pot game? We're trying to locate a certain spot in the home where one coffee pot. Oh, dear.
Can you coffee pot in the living room?
The coffee pot in the living room? No, I'm sorry to say no. Now, how about this lady here? Mrs. Hill, would you like to make a guess?
You coffee pot under the kitchen sink?
Do you coffee pot under the kitchen sink? No. And as soon as I tell you where one coffee pot, in this particular case, you'll understand why not. Let's see, now who's taking... Mrs. Noel is taking Brenda's place.
You coffee pot near the kitchen range?
No, you don't coffee pot near the kitchen range. Mrs. Lichtenfeld.
You coffee pot on the kitchen table?
No, you don't coffee pot on the kitchen table. No, sir. And let's see, Mrs. Engel.
In the living room?
No, you don't coffee pot in the living room. Now we start all over again. Would you like to try another guess, Mrs. Engel? It's someplace in the home now. Oh.
I didn't see it. Though I wanted to.
You didn't see it? Well, all right. I'm going to give you a chance to prove that you didn't see it now.
Well, I really didn't.
All right, so you can ask me...
How about the basement?
No, you don't coffee pot in the basement. How about you, Mrs. Lichtenfeld?
You coffee pot in the breakfast room?
No, you don't coffee pot in the breakfast room in this particular instance. And Mrs. Knoll?
On the back porch?
No, you don't coffee pot on the back porch. And Mrs. Hill?
Only one place left.
What?
Bathroom.
That's right. You coffee pot in the bathroom because coffee pot means, in this particular case, a man shaving. So you see, you very well couldn't shave under the kitchen sink, could you? Well, that was a lot of fun. I'd like to ask Mrs. Engel where she's from. Where are you from, Mrs. Engel?
Seattle, Washington.
Seattle, Washington. And how long have you been here in Chicago?
Why, we came Friday night.
And is your husband with you?
No, my husband has passed away.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. And let's see, how about you, Mrs. Lichtenfeld?
Asheville, North Carolina.
Get out. Asheville, North Carolina. Well, good for you. And what brings you to Chicago?
I came up here to get the miracle drug cortisone, and it's been wonderful.
Oh, is that so?
Arthritis.
Well, good for you, and I wish you every success with it. And now, Mrs. Knoll, where are you from?
I'm from Long Beach, California.
Long Beach, California. And what brings you here to Chicago?
I'm with my husband, who is attending a convention of the school business officials.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm. And let's see now, Mrs. Hill, where are you from?
I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, but I've lived in Memphis, Tennessee for the last 2 years. 3 years, rather.
Last 3 years. Well, good for you. Are you here with your husband?
No, I'm here by myself. Well, with another friend.
Oh, I see. I can't understand how these gals get away from their husbands. Well, all right. And, of course, Miss Randall, you're from Windsor,
Yes.
Ontario, Canada. I would like to ask you, ladies, when you're working around the house, what song do you like to sing? What's your favorite song? Or, you know, when you're happy and you're getting work done and you're not thinking about coffee potting and ironing shirts. But do you have a favorite song, Mrs. Engel?
No, but lately it just seems like Irene is going through our mind all the time.
You can say that again and again
Everywhere
because
we go, we get Irene.
that's right. It's on all the jukeboxes. Very, very popular number. Have you heard it enough to sing a little of it for us?
Oh, I don't know any of its words.
Oh, don't you?
Any of the words.
Well, let's see. How about you, Mrs. Lichtenfeld? Do you have a special song, a favorite song you like to sing?
Please go away and let me sleep.
Well, that's all right. That's a good old-timer. Why don't you sing a little of it for us?
I can't sing.
You can? Oh, I see.
When my oldest child was a year old, she said, please don't sing, play the Victrola.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Mrs. Knoll, how about you? Do you have a favorite song?
Well, I like My Wild Irish Rose or Where Under the Green.
Well, say, My Wild Irish Rose is one of my favorites, too. I wonder, could you sing a little of it for us?
Well, I think the audience would much prefer to hear you sing.
Oh, really? I don't sing. I'll tell you what. Maybe Howard could give us a little key on My Wild Irish Rose. Why don't you sing, say half of it, and then we'll have the audience join in on the last of it with you, huh?
Well, I don't sing, but I'd like to ask the audience to join in on it. I'd love to listen to it.
Well, can't you sing a little of it for us?
No, I don't sing.
You can't, huh?
I'll whistle.
Is there anybody, can either of you two ladies sing My Wild Irish Rose? Miss Randall, can you sing it? Can't you sing it? Oh, my, am I going to have to, I'll have to sing this. Let's see. How many of you folks here in the audience can sing it? Well, sing real loud, will you, so they can't hear me. All right, let's try it anyway. What key have you got in, Howard? You better put it down 2 tones. All right. Oh, wait a minute. I'll wait just a minute. It was too high for my baritone. My wild louder, I can't hear you. With my wild Irish rose. Real loud. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for coming up and entering our little quiz here. It's awfully nice of you, and I hope you all enjoy your stay in Chicago, and I wish you a very safe and sane journey back home.
Thanks.
All right, come up and see us again. Now then, Miss Walrath, I noticed on your card you said that you played the piano. You are? Oh, is that on your card? Well, that's funny. Maybe I read somebody else's card by mistake. Oh, yes. Here's Mrs. Reed, Mrs. Arlene Reed. Is she in the audience? Mrs. Arlene Reed. Oh, well, Mrs. Reed, would you step up here, please? And tell us where you're from.
Auburn, New York.
Auburn, New York. And I noticed on your card you say you play the piano. Oh, we have some other folks from Auburn, New York, possibly, huh? How long have you been playing the piano?
Oh, since I was a child.
Well, do you play professionally?
Oh, no.
Oh, you don't?
I just play a little bit in the house.
I noticed on your card you say you have perfect pitch. Is that right?
Well,
You mean if I strike a note on the piano, you can tell me what note it is without seeing it? Just by listening to it? All right, you stand over here. I'm going to test you out.
My piano's so out of tune, though, maybe I can't.
Well, you said you had perfect pitch, not imperfect pitch. All right. F. Mm-hmm. G. What's C? Middle C. That's very good. That's wonderful, isn't it? You know what I'd like for you to do? What do you like to play on the piano? You know, I play the piano a little bit myself, and I sit down, and sometimes I just relax by playing some old song that has stayed with me through the years. What song do you like to play? You like the classics? You play popular?
I just play anything. I usually sit with the lights out and play.
You do?
No, I don't mean to have you turn the lights out.
Well, that's a good way. What would you like to play in the way of a song now?
Oh, I just sit down and play anything that would come to my mind.
All right, would you sit down and play a little tune, and then maybe the two of us, maybe we can play a little double piano, huh?
Okay.
All right, we'll play something for us now that you like, and see if we can guess what it is. We'll have a little music quiz here. Does anyone know the name of the song she's playing? All right. When day is done, that's right. Day is just about done, too. We is just about done. I would like to ask you, you know, I play mostly the old tunes because I don't have time to keep up on the new tunes like Good Night Irene and Good Night Irene and Good Night Irene, see? And but I'm just wondering, can you play Bye Bye Blues? Could you by any chance play Bye Bye Blues? You remember Bye Bye? Let's see, Bye Bye Blues. Oh, All right, I'll say now. I'll tell you what. Let's do. You play. Would you rather play up in the bass? I'll take the treble. And Howard, can you sort of come along with us? We'll have a three-way operation here. All right, Bye Bye Blues. All right, start off. Well, you never know, do you, when folks get together, what one can do and the other can't do and things like that. It's been awfully nice, and I want to thank you folks from the bottom of my heart for sticking around and having fun with us, and I want to thank all of you folks that came up and talked. I know maybe you were a little nervous. Of course, I wasn't. I never get nervous on the radio. But I want to thank you so much and for being such a grand audience, and maybe one of these days we'll be seeing you on television with a new show. You never can tell. Hope so anyway. Bye.